Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street. We have an XDC video for you guys today. Before we go into this one in a bit more detail, don't forget to check out the other videos on the channel. There's quite a few new interviews going on with a few different projects and technology partners within the blockchain crypto space. So do go check those out. Also, guys, just keep an eye out for our YouTube shorts. I'm trying to delve into those a bit more as well, particularly with some time constraints. Sometimes during the day, quick, snappy news reports tend to be very much of interest to people. So keep an eye out for those as well. And of course, if you haven't done so already, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Hit that button for me. That'd be massively appreciated. And also the like button too, to help us get to more and more people, educate the world more about crypto, DeFi, blockchain, and the rest. So guys, let's go straight into this one. So we're just going to be talking purely really around the aspiration of trade finance. Of course, this is a humongous multi-trillion dollar market avenue. We've seen here, particularly in the UK, again, I'm not going to go into massive detail because we covered this and I'll leave a link to that video at the end of this one. The Electronic Trade Documents Act 2023 passed through Royal Assent back in July, and on the 20th of September this year, it will actually launch as well. So this is actually quite exciting. We'll go through this report quickly in a second from Clifford Chance. These guys are heavily involved with like the Digital Pound Foundation as well. Met a few of those guys at the recent event, which was really cool. But this whole topic, guys, will also look into the interactions certainly last year with the World Economic Forum and the World Trade Organization, WTO as well. Just how this like pieces together. It's really interesting. It's really exciting. Of course, there's the aspects of artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, IoT, and the integration of things like cloud and blockchain technology to come forward as well. So this is quite massive developments over the last few years. This bill is not new. It's been around for a few years. It had various different names, and this is the one that's basically been passed quite recently. And we know XDC's relation to this purely from the trade finance aspect, especially if you follow the likes of Andre Castleman, for example, who constantly talks about TFID and the trade finance application of XDC's network into that ethos of why this technology is so important to things like supply chain management, trade finance in general in terms of tokenization of assets, the transparency, the processing, the validity of everything as well. So all these things going on in the background, and these are accommodated really over the next few months. Actually, there's one coming up in October, the Trade Finance Investor Day. You have to pay quite a bit of money to go to this one, but there's going to be some great speakers, great companies coming involved with that, including the likes of XDC representation. And this is something that's really going to power forward, guys, over the coming years. And certainly when that 20th of September date comes around this year, things will start really gathering pace. And this is where we really want to, as retail investors, look at projects and opportunities that cover this particular area. Now, I still personally believe that XDC is very much under the radar. I don't think a lot or enough people think about it or have it in their portfolio. So if you're one of those out there, this is obviously not financial advice, but go check out the intro videos that we've done and also have a look at just general research, whether it's other channels or through the utilization of various websites, and particularly things like TFDI here, the trade finance initiatives that are going on worldwide right now, because there's a lot of orientation around XDC network, and of course a load of other projects that we cover in this this area as well. So it's really, really exciting to see this, and especially when you see the likes of multitude of different banking systems, supply chain management systems all coming together under one roof, and in general in the industry pulling that all together as well, as the technology and the integration of various platforms, APIs, etc. come together to really define the trade sector moving forward, and certainly from the trade finance. So we've gone into a lot of statistics in previous videos, going about the value of a global market in trade finance, but it also means to the deliverable aspect of import and export, supply chain, etc., which is absolutely huge. And I wanted to touch on this actually because this is from January, and it talks about the inspirational areas of the integration of XDC being utilized in this area. And it talks here about the promise of trade tech policy. Now, this is something, as I mentioned earlier, that the WEF, World Economic Forum, and the WTO came together and created processes and advisory boards and conversational topics around trade finance from a world's perspective. So, okay, we can roll back here quickly and say that the UK has pretty much defined itself as ticking that box. It's going to start allowing the digitalization of trade assets and documents, etc., utilizing DLT blockchain technology amongst other areas of technology as well. But in this particular aspect becomes very interesting because I'm pretty confident that the rest of the world is going to follow suit. We know America's doing something very similar with the digitalization of documentation, smart contracts, etc. There's a Data Security Act going through right now, certainly through the UK Parliament aspect. And we will do a video on that because it is really interesting, certainly from the smart contract application. We'll probably cover that more in the IOTA video that we have coming out today or tomorrow, purely because there's a huge interaction there with the IoT application and AI, etc., which of course IOTA responds to all of those different functionalities and brings them all together. But back to the looping side of XDC as a network in both the private and the public sector, it really opens up a giant opportunity here. So this is page 13. So this is the document. I'll leave a link in the description. Policy approaches to harness trade digitalization. Now, there's actually, I don't know if many of you know how to, but of course you can go on the find or search browser aspect and find how many words there are in each document that you're reading. There's over 53 representations of the word blockchain in here. I'm sure if you look for DLT and other formalities, you'll find a load more. But it's this aspect here that we wanted to focus on. And if you remember conversations that we've had before, where we incorporate things like blockchain, Internet of Things, and AI. So the Internet of Things is basically any device or application that connects to the internet. It's, these days it could be most things like washing machines, TVs, etc., smart cameras, smart bulbs, and so on and so forth. And this has a massive orientation in the sense of in the near future. This technology, by the way, is quite old because I think Bill Gates used to do this years ago. But if you took something out of your fridge, it would know the entire system and supply chain mechanism that you need to have that replaced. So then that in an algorithmic data response can go, oh, the drones need to harvest and seed things more or quicker or based on trend and demand and supply in a full real-time simultaneous scenario. And that's where blockchain does come in, because it can respond to so many thousands upon thousands of transactions per second. And just to reiterate, those who are new to the channel or don't know this kind of reiteration, every action or a transfer or an action, i.e. the word transaction, is where it comes from. So this isn't just about a finance of you paying for something, which would be simultaneous and automatic anyway. You wouldn't need to get a card out, you wouldn't need to get Apple Pay or anything like that. It would just happen because it's all tokenized and through your digital identity, etc. The point being is that this pulls that technology and that ethos into the equation, where you can essentially have everything on an algorithmic data and pushed out as quickly as it can be. It can be all simultaneous, really fast, and produce things in a validation and processing perspective at those levels of transactions. So everything, whether it be that drone harvesting, seeding, delivering, or something taken out of your fridge, or something to do with your car with wireless charging, etc., and back into the EV grids via AI, it's all linked or will be all linked when we talk about this in further detail. So in the trade finance side of things, and supply chain management is always something I try and focus on specifically because it's one of the easiest ones to explain, is that incorporation of supply and demand, the aspect of logistics, transportation, how we can make things more sustainable, economical, rather than forecasting or over ordering things, or even under ordering things, where we then have a rush and a panic and a load of resource, a load of cost, and of course cross-border payments cost money as well. All of that can pretty much be eliminated with these three aspirational things. So we've got blockchain and distributed ledger technology. I'll just read this passage. So blockchain and DLT create an incontrovertible and indelible record of supply chain transactions from the purchase of raw materials to the sale and delivery of the final product. used as a tool to guarantee the origins, processing conditions, including conformity with labor and environmental standards, and journeys of globally traded goods such as fair trade coffee, sustainable lumber and fish. Blockchain and DLT can help trade to become more sustainable and inclusive. Exactly the points we just mentioned. And it can shorten the time required for verifying and processing documents and can help to reduce document-based fraud. Blockchain and DLT can also accelerate and secure payments through automation, which will enable money and documents to move across borders simultaneously for the first time and contribute to the mitigation of payments risks associated with open account trade finance. Absolutely incredible evolution of technology processing as well. And granted, one of the possible side effects of this is the reduction in people, but we know that this is kind of coming over time anyway, as more and more jobs get taken over by robotics, machinery, and certainly AI in the near future. Hence why we always talk about basic universal income and things like this, the operations of World Economic Forum agendas. But that aside, is all of these things can really enhance economies, it can enhance the speed of things, and certainly as a consumer, as this topic of ECG gets more and more prominent, this is about the social governance, the environmental impacts, not just from companies, but also us as users, where we kind of like rely on information that comes from companies and products that we buy, and we rely and trust on labels on things, whether it be fair trade as an example. But what does that actually mean? And we never actually get to see the full transparency. And that includes anything across things like the energy sector, produce, and everything else that we can possibly think of, right? So we've got to keep that in mind when we're thinking about the possibilities of tokenization and certainly the aspect of blockchain technology being enforced in here. And as I said, with the integration as well of AI and other aspects. And look at these things here. The 5Gs of trade tech, global data transmission, global digital identity of persons and objects, global trade rules access, global legal recognition, and global interoperability of data models. It's going to bring the whole entire system together, all countries together, anything and everything you possibly think of. And I'll just scroll down here with the blockchain word. You can see all the areas of which it is spoken about. Absolutely fantastic to see. And as I said, we'll do a separate video on the Data Security Act going through right now in relation to smart contracts, because this is actually a huge point to be made with that as well. But looping this back around, when we talk about ML-ETR, this is something we covered in the recent XDC video as well. There's a whole entire massive mechanism being put together right now, and it's coming into fruition. The acts and the bills are coming into law, and this is where we start seeing the conversations, the topics of these projects that we talk about here on the channel, and many others do as well, coming to life. This is no more talking anymore, this is doing. And this is becoming the real world utility, RWU. So guys, that is why I'm so fascinated by XDC, especially with its integration of trade finance, the people behind it, and the interoperability, guys, of all the banking systems, of all the supply chain mechanisms, and those transactions that we just spoke about being powered by the likes of XDC network. It's not the only one that's going to be involved in this, of course, but it's certainly one of the big ones. And as I said earlier, I truly believe it's still under the radar and perhaps even misunderstood, and perhaps not given the credit that it should have. And that's fine by me for now, because it keeps the price down lower as much as possible and as long as possible to keep obtaining those as well. But we mentioned just a minute ago about the events that are coming up, of course. We've got the trade finance events coming up in October, which will not necessarily be public. You have to pay quite a bit of money for them, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on as time goes by, because you always get news out of these. And look at this is quite cool. I'm going to need to find the tweet, or maybe an updated tweet, of the guy that used to do all the what kind of fish you are based on how much XDC you hold. But you can see here, when it's over 70,000 wallets now, and there's a substantial amount of addresses, 916,000 addresses on the XDC network right now. And let us know where you might be in this spectrum, but I would love to get it to these higher regions at some point. But for sure, that's going back to my point about it being under the radar. There's an opportunity to grab hold of this before we really truly kick off this trade finance integration with blockchain. and XDC. So there's a few topics, guys, to think about. Let's jump into the chart of XDC. Of course, we had the fluctuation upwards with the UK law passing by royal assent back in July. That's taken us up to, I can't believe how fast time is going, but on the 24th of August as a recording. So we actually shot up approximately nearly 200% in that time frame. It's absolutely phenomenal. Now, what we're seeing right now is a bit of stability currently around this sort of 5.5 cents. So we went all the way up pretty much near enough, close enough to 10 cents. And we've had this bit of a drop down. So we're very much teetering around that halfway mark, okay? So from a trader's perspective, this is a good marker to buy back in, which is why we're seeing these volumes kind of kicking in again, but they're very level-headed. What I would anticipate potentially is bouncing off this particular area down here around about the 4.4, 4.5 cent mark, potentially in the near future, where we might see another rally upwards as we see a bounce off effect coming down again. Because we are in a bear market, guys, don't forget, irrespective of how amazing XDC is as a network and its token utility aspects as well. But from a trader's perspective, I totally get why we're in this kind of current situation. We had a drop down thus far of 42%. Typically, you would see between 50 and 70% markers where there's a proper retaliation into a bull move beyond from where we've come from. So this is where we are at the moment. Of course, as I just said, around the 5.5 cent mark. You'll probably see a bit of traction here for a bit of time. But for sure, it's going to be quite interesting as we watch this develop, because I do anticipate, yes, we'll have a couple of bounce off areas in the fib retracement levels. We can actually see this identifies, we've got the longer term charts here, which we're nowhere really near those particular lines, albeit we shattered through those in July. On the macro level parts of the chart, you can start to identify two particular areas of interest, bouncing roughly around this like middle range one at about 5.7 cents, and where we are currently at 5.4, so very much matching in this area. Now, if this fails over the next few days, of course, even further from a macro perspective, we could argue that we might see some individual movements in between here. However, predominantly from a more aspirational effect in terms of getting lower positions of XDC, 4.7 cents is definitely a potential opportunity to take some buy orders in. That's what I'm doing personally. It's not financial advice, but that is the area of interest for me, as well as buying on a DCA aspect at this current area. So I'm just looking at these areas of interest that also matches up very closely to some volatile areas that we saw back here between June and July last year, and also more recently back here in April. So since then, of course, we had a big massive drop all the way down to around 2 cents. Should have bought more, the old saying goes, but that is where it is. That's how we've ended up. And we've had some good positive moves with XDC since then, majorly around narratives and things that have been going on with regards to real world utility, which we discussed in this video. So those are the areas of interest to me. And as I said, most longer term traders, where they're looking at the RSIs here, for example, the bottom left on the 90 day is a good example, and so is the 28 day. So as we're seeing this develop over a 2-3 month period, we're starting to see that 50 mark. Okay, so when we get around to that sort of 45, whether it's news related, it could be great timing with the events that XDC is involved with and potentially hosting, that we do see a bounce back off that. And don't get me wrong, that could definitely happen. So there's an argument to say that we could reach back down these and, as I said, retaliate back upwards. I'm not suggesting that we'll go all the way back up to 10 cents again, but we'll certainly maybe at least come back to this 5.5, 5.8 cent mark in the near future again if we do bounce back down. So you might see, if I can just draw this in quickly, is this kind of effect where we come back down to this area, we bounce back up, we start seeing reflective patterns around these particular fib levels here because we want to get past back this one, and then potentially a rally back down towards these areas in the near future as well. Of course, what also could happen on the flip side of that is more and more people become aware of XDC, and there's more bulls than ever before that don't want these price points to drop at all. And that's where we get the force of demand and supply really kicking in. But in this bear market, I find it hard to believe that we could be in that position to do so. If this happened in like 12 to 18 months time, different story in my opinion, but let's see how that plays out. But those are my various interests of areas to accumulate XDC and potentially take some advantages. I'm a long-term holder of XDC. I don't tend to sell any unless I see some really significant moves, and that was a significant one. I didn't really do too much with it, but I'm more interested in getting back to these sort of 20 cent marks as a minimum in the near future at some point. But yeah, for me, it's just accumulating XDC at the lowest points possible, at the best areas we possibly can identify, and that's where I see them personally. The other point to mention quickly is the performance on the right hand side here. You can see the week and the month slowly creeping into negative, which kind of orientates around my theory around this drop down potentially slightly below that 5 cent mark. We'll have to see how that plays out. The others are of course green, mainly because of that big huge influx that we saw upwards through July, the end of July into August. So there's no surprises there at all, but don't expect any surprises to see that 3 month starts reducing a bit. I'm not saying it will come back down to 0 and negative, but as time goes by, of course, that will reflect in those areas too. But let's see how that plays out. It's very interesting indeed. So let's keep an eye on it for the next week or two. I'll do any YouTube shorts if anything significant happens, of course, and we'll keep an eye on those events. And some really interesting news, guys. Before I throw this out at the end, we will have an interview with Andre Casterman coming up in the next week or two. Of course, in Texas at the moment, but we've got some recording scheduled for his return. Really looking forward to that. I'm sure you will be as well. That's what we're trying to do on the channel, get more and more influential people on the channel, have some good discussions, topics. So if there's anything you want to ask Andre, anything related to XDC or trade finance in general, anything about Andre himself, drop them in the comments below. Really looking forward to doing that one. It's going to be absolutely huge and really exciting. So thanks for watching this one, guys. We will see you in the next XDC video. Take care. Bye-bye.